Hi guys, welcome to the color correction and color grading section in this complete Adobe Premiere Pro 2021 course. In this section, we will look at the different Lumetri scopes in Premiere. We will work with the Lumetri Color Panel, including the RGB and hue saturation curves. And then we will look at how we can fix skin tones using the Lumetri effects and the Lumetri scopes. So without further ado, let's get straight to the business. What's up guys, hope you're all doing great. Welcome to the first tutorial in this color correction and color grading section. Now in this video, we'll be looking at the different Lumetri scopes we have available in Premiere. But before jumping into that, let's first briefly talk about what the terms color correction and color grading actually means. So color correction is basically the process of adjusting light and intensity to achieve the right white balance and even out light exposure. And then color grading is basically enhancing the existing colors to give a certain emotion to the clip, like a wintry look or an orange and tea look, something like that. So guys, once again, color correction is correcting the exposure and white balance, and color grading is manipulating colors to achieve a certain look. Now, if you're still feeling a bit confused about these, then don't worry, because in this section, we will be going through a whole color correction and color grading process in so much detail that hopefully by the end you will have a really solid understanding and you will be more confident with these concepts. Now, in order to color correct or color grade a footage, we need to work in the Lumetri panel. The Lumetri panel can be accessed by either clicking over here or by going into the Windows menu and then selecting Lumetri panel. Now, under the Lumetri color panel, we have 6 tabs, and we will be going through each of these tabs later in this course. But first of all, for now, let's look at the Lumetri scopes. So if I right click in this space, I can see that there are 5 different scopes available. And now let me just bring up all of these scopes and then we can go through each of these. So I've got this one now, 2, 3, okay, and now I've got all of these here. So in this course, guys, we'll be covering the Luma waveform, which basically shows the whites and blacks in your footage, and then the RGB and vector scopes, which shows the saturation and colors in your footage. Now, these 2 scopes over here, I'll be honest with you, I have really no idea what they do, and I haven't really come across many people who use this, and I myself, I've never really used these scopes when I'm color grading my footage. So in this course, we will be using just 3 curves, which are the Luma waveform, RGB and vector scopes. So let's first start with the waveform, which is the one over here. So the waveform is mostly used for luminance, and by that I mean the brightness levels, the darks, the highlights, midtones and your blacks. Now this one basically shows the luminance levels in your image from left to right. So you can see the clip in the timeline, and you can notice that we have this bright limb on the left hand side, which can be clearly seen in the waveform monitor over here. Now, if I get rid of this limb, you will see that the bright spot in the waveform monitor has disappeared too. And now if I bring the lamp back again, then you can see that the bright spot has appeared again. So as I said, that it measures the luminance levels from left to right. Now, the measurement is done through the scale, as you can see over here on the left. So this is your 0 IRE and this is the 100 IRE. Now, IRE is basically a broadcasting term, and it stands for Institute of Radio Engineers. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but this 0 IRE, so anything lower than the 0 IRE means that the details of your image will be lost, will be completely disappeared in the dark. Similarly, the 100 IRE is where the details of your image will be lost in the whites. So waveform kind of tells you the exposure levels in your image, as I said earlier. Now, the other thing that this waveform is going to tell you is the contrast. So let's go and play around with these controls over here and see what happens to the waveform. Now, don't worry too much about these controls, because we are going to go through each of these later in this section. But right now, if you can see that when I'm increasing the exposure here, the image is getting brighter, and you can see that in the waveform. But the more exposure I'm increasing, the poorer the image is getting. So the image is kind of getting a bit blown out now. Now let's see what happens when I increase the contrast. So in the waveform, what's happening now is that when I'm increasing the contrast, it is basically pushing the darks down while lifting the highlights up, and we are getting more contrast in the image. Now, if I decrease the contrast, you see that the image has become completely flat and lost all of its contrast. Let's now go to the curves And I'm sorry, I'll have to repeat myself again that I will be covering this section with you later in the course, but for now I just want to kind of show you how the waveform actually works. So if I move this curve into the mid grace, and you can see the image has completely disappeared and everything has been squashed in here because we lost our contrast completely. Now if I start pulling the contrast back up, like getting the highlights up and the darks down like this, we start to get the details back of our image again. Now guys, we will be covering these curves later in the course, how to get the perfect contrast using the S curve and all of that. So for now, I just wanted to kind of show you that how your Luma waveform monitor actually works and how you can read it. So guys, just to recap it, the Luma waveform scope will tell you the darkness levels and the brightness levels and also the contrast in your image. Let's now look at the next one, which is the vector scope YUV. So I'm first going to get rid of my Luma waveform, and I need the vector scope over here, which is this one. So now the vector scope gives you the measurement of colors that exist in your footage. Now this is basically laid in the same way, exactly in the same way as your color wheels, which are over here. So you can see in the vector scope we have yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta and red, and these are exactly in the same locations as we have in the color wheels. So basically the location of these colors is based on the logic that these are complementary colors, so they are kind of opposite of each other. What I mean by that is that if you look at the color wheels over here, these colors are basically placed opposite of each other. So if I move this plus sign into magenta, and now you can notice that we have too much magenta in our clip, which means that there is an absence of green color. And if I now move this plus sign into the blue area, then you can see that we've got too much blue. That means that there is an absence of yellow and vice versa. So the vector scope is basically a representation of hue, and it's often called hue wheel as well, as it shows where you have concentration of specific colors. Now hue is basically the colors in your image. So if you have green leaves, there's a green hue. You have blue sky or blue water, then you have blue hue. And I mean, hue is just colors that exist in your image. The saturation, on the other hand, is the intensity of the hue. It's not changing the colors of your image, but it is just the intensity of the hue that exists in your image. So if I just move the saturation slider all the way down to 0, you can see that all of the colors in the vector scope have been sucked into this point. And the image is now left with no hue, no color. So we have no colors in the image, and it has become a complete black and white or grayscale image. And now if I move the slider all the way up, then you can see how intense the hue has become in the image. The colors are basically still the same, but they are now much more intense than they were before. Now there are some limits when it comes to colors, and these rules are basically defined by the broadcasting industry. So here in the vector scope, this inner circle boundary is your legal limit. I mean, I'm saying legal limit, but it's basically guidance sort of a thing. So that's your limit for your red, blue, cyan and magenta and all of the other colors. Outside the inner circle, where you see all of these boxes, these are basically the limits for graphics, as graphics contain intensified colors, so there's a higher tolerance for those. A general rule of thumb is not to have your color spreading by more than 1/3, but again guys, it varies from image to image, from video to video. So the vector scope, guys, is mostly used for two main things: the hue of your image and your saturation, and it gives you a very good indication of where your colors are. Now it's also very useful scope when you are trying to fix skin tones, and we are going to look at that later in the course. So guys, that's your vector scope. I mean, once again, it gives you a very good indication on your hue and on your saturation level. Okay, so now the next one we are going to look at is the RGB parade. So the RGB parade is somewhat similar to the waveform. It measures the image from left to right, but this scope has three colors, which are kind of like the main colors in pretty much all of the cameras that are being used today. So this is basically measuring the luminance of your red channel from your left, and the next one is measuring the luminance of your green channel, and then the last one is measuring the luminance levels of your blue channel or your blue color. When these primary colors are added together, that is when you get a full colored image like this one. So if I now just go into the curves and start pulling down the blue channel or the blue color, Now you can see that my clip is left with only two colors, and if I now pull down the red too, then my clip is left with only green color. So when a clip is balanced, all your channels are somewhat in the similar area. So if I now pull down some red, you guys can now see that we have started to get some balance, but if I drag it right down, then I have lost my balance once again. So basically the RGB parade is very handy in balancing your color, so your footage doesn't look too blue or orange, and the colors are always nicely spread out. So guys, these are the three scopes that you are going to be using mostly when color grading or color correcting your footage. I hope you found this video useful. If you got any questions, anything you're not sure about, feel free to drop those in the comment section, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm now gonna see you in the next video, so till then, you take care of yourself. What's up guys, hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to another Premiere Pro tutorial. In the previous video, we went through the Lumetri Scopes, and in this video, we're going to look at the Lumetri Color Panel and the controls we have available in here. So first of all, if you can't see the Lumetri Color Panel, that's probably because you're not in the right workspace. So all you need to do is you need to click in here in your Windows tab and then select Lumetri Color, and hopefully now you should be able to see it over here. So under the Lumetri panel, we have 6 tabs, and we are going to go through each of these tabs, but in this video, we will be covering basic correction and creative. So let's first see what the basic correction tab offers. So the first thing in the basic correction tab is the LUT drop down, and a LUT is a lookup table, and what it does is that it gives a certain look to your footage. Now we will discuss this in more detail later on, like how to apply LUTs and where you can find LUTs, but for now, just think of a LUT as a pre-configured or a pre-designed look that you can apply on your clips. Now, the next one we have here is the white balance, and this is basically going to see if the whites in the image are going towards a specific color channel. So if I select a white in my clip right now, and then you will see that it will adjust the blues and greens automatically. So let me now just turn off my Lumetri effect for a second so I can show you guys the before and after. So I can do this just by clicking here on this FX icon. If I click on it, I have turned my effect off. And if I click on it again, so it's back on now. So you can see the before and after effect. Now then, the temperature sliders we have here are basically the sliders with complementary colors. So we have blue on one end and orange on the other, and then the next one we have is green and magenta on opposite ends. So if I move the slider towards blue, then that will give the image a cold look, and if I move it towards orange, it will give my image, my clip, a warmer look. Now these sliders are mostly used for color balance, as you can see in the RGB parade as well, that when I'm taking my slider towards left, towards blue, it is changing my color channel. So when you are trying to color balance your footage, if you don't want to use the curves, you can come over here in this section and use these two sliders as well. Now the next set of sliders we have under the tone section are all to do with the luminance levels of your clip. As you can see that we have the exposure, we have contrast, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks. So I'm going to bring up my Luma waveform because these sliders will have an effect on the luminance levels of my clip. So now I've got my Luma waveform over here, so that's fine. So on the Luma waveform monitor, the blacks are here from 0 to 20 IRE. Then we have the shadows that are in the region of 20 to 40 IRE. Then the brightness are in the range of 40 to 60 IRE. Then we've got the highlights that lie in about 60 to 80 IRE, and then the whites that are in the region of 80 to 100 IRE. So as you can see now that I'm moving these sliders, the effect can be clearly seen in the relative regions. If I increase the blacks, you can see the effect in the 0 to 20 range of my waveform monitor. Similarly, if I move the highlights, then you can notice that in the 60 to 80 IRE range. A general rule is not to have anything above 100, as the details will be lost in the whites, and also not to have anything below or around 0, as the details will be lost in the blacks. An ideal waveform should be spread very evenly, but again it depends on the mood of your clip too. So if you have a clip of a dark room, then obviously most of your stuff would be here in the bottom section and you wouldn't have too much going on in the top half. Let me quickly show you the way I adjust my clips. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the whites down, and then the blacks as well, and also the shadows. And now I am going to increase my contrast a bit, and let's increase the highlights as well. So straight away you can see the effect not just in my clip but on the waveform monitor too. I think this looks fine. So let's just give it a warmer look. So I'm gonna go towards a little orange and then a slight adjustment to the tint as well. Okay, cool. So now we can see that our waveform monitor looks perfect. So let's go to the RGB parade and see if our colors are balanced or not. So let me bring up the RGB parade and get rid of my waveform monitor so I've got enough space. Okay, cool. So now I can see that, we can see that the red channel is slightly higher than the other two. So I'm gonna bring it down a bit and then bring this one down too, so you can now see that the colors are now balanced. Yeah, so that's fine. So let me just now turn my Lumetri effect off by clicking here on this FX button. And so this is our clip before, and if I turn it on again, so this is after. So this one looks much better. So now guys, one thing to remember is that these scopes are there for guidance, and when you are color correcting or color grading your clips, you will obviously need to look at the scopes as well as your clip too. So you'll be using these scopes and your eyes both. You can't just rely completely on your eyes, because your monitor, your screen might not be showing you the full colors, or you may have become used to the colors on the screen. So it's always better to have these scopes and your clips side by side, and also some common sense too. Now you also have the option of resetting all the changes that you have made by hitting this reset button. And let's say that you don't have time to do all of this stuff, and you also don't have a lot to apply on your clip, then you can simply ask Premiere to color correct your footage automatically by clicking on this auto button. And as you can see that as soon as I clicked on this auto button, Premiere just kind of adjusted my contrast highlights and some bits over there. And now this is before and this is after. So it made very few adjustments over there. Now the last one we have under this tab is the saturation, and it deals with the overall color, with the overall hue of your clip. Let me bring up first of all my vector scope, because we went through it in the last video and we know from there that the vector scope deals with our saturation. So I'm gonna get rid of my RGB parade now, and I've got my vector scope here. So now you can see that when I'm moving the saturation slider up, the colors are not changing, but they're just intensifying. And similarly, when I'm moving the slider down, then the colors are just disappearing. So the saturation slider here will increase or decrease the overall hue of your clip. So guys, these are all the controls in the basic corrections tab. Now let's look at the next one. Now the next tab we have under the Lumetri Color Panel is the Creative tab. This one is primarily used if you want to apply a LUT, and as I mentioned earlier, that a LUT or a lookup table is basically a certain look that has already been pre-designed. Now LUTs can obviously definitely save you a lot of time, as I said before, and if you know the kind of emotion you want to add or a certain kind of look that you want to give to your footage, then you can simply apply a ready-made LUT. You will, however, need to make slight adjustments, but it will definitely save you time that you would have to otherwise spend in correcting and grading your clip. Now there are some built-in LUTs already in there. If you go in this drop down, and once you have selected a LUT, you can then just apply it, and you also have the ability to adjust the intensity of it by using the slider. So if I move my slider towards the right, so it's just basically increasing the intensity of my LUT, as you could see in the clip, and if I just move it towards the left, it's basically decreasing the intensity of it. So at this point it's just 0 now, so there's basically nothing applied on my clip. And if I start moving it towards my right, I'm basically intensifying it. So pretty straightforward. Now the first slider we have is the faded film under the adjustments, and this is again pretty self-explanatory, as it will give a faded look to your clip. The second one is sharpness. So if your footage is too soft or too sharp, you can adjust this one using the slider here. So if I move the slider to the very top, look how crispy the image has become. And if I do the opposite now, you can see how soft my clip has become. And now the next one we have is the vibrance, and this is definitely one of my favorite ones because it works very differently. Now what it does is that it only increases the saturation of less saturated part of your footage. Now let me explain. So if I use this saturation slider over here, it will boost the overall saturation of my clip. Whereas if I use the vibrance effect over here, it will only boost saturation for the less saturated parts without affecting the already saturated items. Let me just do it once again, kind of show you how it works. So let me just increase the saturation once, and now you can see that our image looks too saturated, it's overly saturated. And now I'm gonna go back to 100, and now let me increase the vibrance, and now you can see that, I mean, definitely it looks overly saturated, but if you notice it, it only increased the saturation of our less saturated parts. So that's how you can use this vibrance effect. And then we have these two color wheels, which can be used to adjust the highlights and the shadows. If you think you have too much blue or green, you can use these two color wheels. And finally, we have this tint balance slider, which again works very similarly to the one that we looked at in the basic corrections tab. So guys, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't really use these very often. I mean, the only times I ever use these sliders or color wheels is when I'm applying a LUT, and even then I prefer using the curves, which we will cover in the next video, in the next tutorial. But really, it's your choice. If you find these ones easier, effective, then go for it. So yeah, I mean, that's really up to you. Now guys, that's really it for now. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions, anything you want to ask, feel free to drop that in the comment section, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm not gonna see you in the next video, so till then, you take care of yourself. What's up guys, hope you're all well and safe. Welcome to another tutorial in this complete Premiere Pro course. Now in this section, we are discussing the different color correction and grading tools we have available in Premiere. And in this video, we will be going through the different curves we have in Lumetri Color Panel. Now the curves are like the most effective and powerful color grading tool that you have in Premiere. But before we go into that, just one thing I want to say is that you may have noticed that in every tutorial, I work on a different stock footage. Now, that's only because I want to give you guys some real life experience, because obviously in reality you would be working on different clips and some might be dark, some might be too bright. So I just want to give you guys an idea of how you can work on different sorts of footages. So I just wanted to kind of bring this up in case you're thinking why I work on a different footage in every single tutorial. Now, let's go back to what we want to do in this video. So in the previous video, we looked at the basic correction and creative tab. So I'm just going to give you a brief recap first of all before we go ahead and progress with this course. Now, I have this clip on my timeline and I've got my Luma waveform as well already over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do some basic corrections and the effect of that in my Luma waveform. So first of all, I'm going to bring my whites down and then the blacks as well. And now I'm going to bring my shadows down too. Now I am going to increase my contrast and a bit of highlights too, and I think that's fine. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's fine. And now finally, let me bring my exposure down too. Yeah, very slightly. Okay, cool. Now this looks okay, and now I'm just gonna drag my temperature slider towards a bit of orange, and then the tint as well towards some green. Yeah, cool. So this is now before and this is the after. I made some basic corrections so you guys can see the difference. Now at all times when I was making these changes, I was looking at both the waveform monitor and my clip to make sure that I'm just not going in the wrong direction. So yeah, that was just like a brief recap of what we did in the previous video, guys. If you haven't watched that, I would highly recommend you to go and watch it, because we discussed in a great detail these corrections and the impact of this on our Lumetri scopes. So now I'm going to reset all of this by clicking on this button, and now let's go to the curves and look at the first one, which is the RGB curve. Now the way this curve works is that the whole bottom region is basically your black region and the upper region is your highlights region. Now this is your dark node and this is your highlight node. So if you look here, from your black node, halfway through should be a 50 IRE, which is your midtones, and then the highlights. And if you want to change any of these, you can just put a node and change it, like you can drag it or lift it upwards. Now the top left corner is all of your bright region, and then the bottom right corner is all of your dark region. Now keep an eye on the waveform when I make changes to the curve. So if I start dragging the black node towards the top left corner, then the image has completely blown out. And if I now drag the highlights down, you can see that the clip has been completely blacked out. So guys, this curve is really helpful to fine tune the contrast and luminance levels. Now let's see what I mean by that. So if you look at the waveform, you will notice that we are losing some details in this area. And as we know that the waveform works from left to right, so you can basically see that in here, we just have too much white in this area. So I can just bring the whites down by grabbing the top node and pulling it slightly, and then moving my black node to increase some blackness as well, and then bringing some highlights down too. So now you can see that the clip has got some contrast as well, and we're not crushing any details anymore. So let me show you the before, and you can see that we were losing out on this area. So we were crushing all of the details in this area, and now in the after we have everything defined properly. Now let me go to the other clip that we worked on in the previous tutorial. Now you can see that in the waveform monitor that we are not crushing any details, but if I want to increase or if I want to improve the luminance levels in this clip, then I can simply mark my blacks by clicking here, and then midpoint by clicking here, and then my highlights by clicking here. Now I'm going to bring my blacks down and lift up my highlights without affecting the mids. So you can now start to see this is curve. Now if you look at the waveform monitor, you will notice that it is perfectly spread out. Now let me show you the before and now the after, and the difference is very clear. Now this S curve is not a rule, and there will be times when this curve will become a complete mess. So it really depends on the footage that you're working on. So if I look at this clip that we were previously working on, the S curve won't be a good one for this at all. So let me first of all reset all of the work that we did before, and now I'm going to try this S curve. So I will bring my blacks down and lift my highlights up, and you can notice that there is definitely an improvement in contrast, but we are crushing all of the details in this area, and you can see it in the clip as well as in the waveform monitor. So guys, it really depends on the kind of footage that you're working on, but in majority of cases, in most cases, the S curve will be your go-to curve. So guys, this was your luminance curve. Now we also have other three color channels in here. So you have the red one, you've got the green channel, and then you have the blue channel as well. Now you can use the color curves in the same way as we worked with the luminance curve. So let me firstly bring up my RGB palette and get rid of my waveform monitor. Okay, so now if you think that there is too much blue in your footage, then you can just bring the blues down by grabbing the highlight nodes, and you can see in the RGB scope that how it is affecting the blue channel. Now if you see that there is too much of red in the highlights, then you can just bring the highlights down by dragging it from this point, and you can see the effect of it in the RGB curve, that how it is pushing the highlights down. So guys, I mean, you do have a lot of control on individual colors if you use this curve, and at the same time you also have a lot of flexibility as well. So these were your RGB curves and your luminance curve. Now let's go ahead and look at the hue saturation curves. So the first one we have here is the hue versus saturation curve. So basically this is a change of saturation within a specific hue. So let me use this dropper and pick a color, and straight away it has generated these 3 points. So the center point is the color range of the chosen area, and then the 2 side points are the soft points basically. So if you drag the center point down, look how it's going to desaturate that specific color, and if I drag it upwards, look how it's increasing saturation. So guys, it's a very powerful tool if you want to target just one specific color in your footage. But just remember one thing, that you are targeting one specific color but not a specific area. So if that color exists in other areas of your footage, those areas will be affected too. Now the second one we have here is the hue versus hue, and this is when you want to increase a particular hue in the image. So let me pick a color in the image, and now if I drag the center point down, you can see this whole line of different colors. And now if I leave my center point, which is this color, you can see that the change has been made in my clip, and my color has been completely changed. So guys, again, another very powerful tool if you want to target a specific hue and you want to change it. But once again, I mean, I can't stress enough on this, that you have to remember that you are changing a specific hue, but it's not going to be limited to that specific area. So if that color presents in any other part of that of your footage, then those parts will get affected as well. Okay, so now the next one we have here is hue versus luma. So this is going to change the luminance levels in a specific hue. So if I now pick a hue in my clip, if I now pick a color in my clip, and now if I start dragging this center point, look how it's going to make this brighter and basically in the end destroying it completely. And if I drag it down, then it's just totally blacking it out. Now again, a very powerful tool of targeting one color and then controlling that luminance level. So now the next one is luma versus saturation, and this basically changes the saturation levels within your luminance. So if you want to desaturate some of the darker or brighter spots in your clips, then this can be used very easily. So let me pick a color in my clip, and now if I drag this all the way, then I have basically, as you can see, just desaturated this, and same is the effect if I move the center points upward. So it's going to do the opposite and will increase saturation. So guys, again, a very powerful tool if you are looking to target the saturation levels within your luminance parts. Okay, so now the next and the last one is this saturation versus saturation curve. So I'll be perfectly honest with you guys, I mean, I don't really use this one, but if you have an already saturated area and you want to change the saturation levels in there, then you can use this curve. Now let me pick up a color, and if I start playing up with my curve, and I've got the center point, now let me drag this up. So you can see how it's changing the saturation levels. So again, I mean, up to you how you want to use this one. So guys, all of these different hue saturation curves, your RGB curves, can be extremely useful and helpful when you are color grading your footage, and I mean, these curves can give a really nice look to your clips. So guys, that's really it for now. I hope you found this video useful, but if you got any questions, anything you want to ask, feel free to drop that in the comment section, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm now going to see you in the next video, so till then, you take care of yourself. What's up guys, hope you're all doing great. Welcome to another tutorial in this color correction and color grading section. Now this tutorial is part of the complete Premiere Pro 2021 course, and if you haven't seen the previous ones, then I would highly recommend you to go and watch those, because we learned some really cool and exciting stuff. And if you've been watching all of my tutorials, then do stick around, because we've got a lot more things that we are going to cover in this one and in the upcoming ones as well. So far we have covered the Lumetri Scopes in this color grading section, and then we worked with the basic correction and luminance sliders. Then we covered off different effects in Creative tab, and then we looked at the RGB and hue saturation curves in the last video. So in this video, we will be going through the color wheels and mesh tab that we have here in the Lumetri Color Panel. Now this is a really cool feature, because you can actually get a comparison view of the clip that you've created, and then you have the ability to match all of the other similar clips to that one. Let me elaborate that. So if I go into the color wheels and mesh tab now, you can see that we have these luminance sliders. So there's that mid-tone, shadows and highlights, and with each of these sliders we have a color wheel too. You can now increase or decrease the luminance levels of your clips using these sliders, and then you can also do those colors too. Now at the moment we haven't really done anything with these sliders, which is why there is this empty center part, but when I start making changes, that's when these color wheels will all be filled with colors. Now this is just a way of Premiere telling you that you've made changes in this area. Now if I want to reset these changes, then I can just double click here on this plus icon, and Premiere will reset everything that I did in this area. So I mean, it's nothing new, and I mean, these color wheels, these sliders, they work exactly in the same way as all the other color wheels and sliders in Premiere. So let me now select the clip that I have on my timeline, and I'm going to first of all bring the shadows down a bit, and just a little bit, and then I'll move my highlights up, and now I'm going to push the mids towards a bit of magenta, and my shadows just slightly, yeah, towards some green, and then the highlights too. I think this looks all right. This looks fine now. Yeah. Okay, so now let me turn the effect off by unticking this box and see the difference. Okay, now I just need to kind of fine tune this, and I think it looks okay now. Yeah, it does. Okay, so now that I'm happy with this clip, I would obviously want all of the other clips that are part of the same footage to have that similar color schemes, just so they all look consistent. So I'm going to select the other clip from the same scene, and will then click on this comparison view button. And what Premiere is going to do is that it will show me my timeline next to this clip in my program monitor. So now I can move my timeline to the clip that I want to use as my baseline, as my base clip, and then I'm just going to hit this apply match button, and you will see that Premiere will do its best to match both these clips by making all the color adjustments by itself. So there you go, guys. Now obviously it's not perfect and you'll still need to fine tune it, but it will give you a very good starting point and you won't have to do everything from scratch. Plus you are also able to see both of your clips side by side, which will help you in having that consistency. Now if I turn this off, you can see the job that Premiere did with this clip, which I think is not bad at all. And especially when you're trying to match faces in your clips, then this feature can definitely help you big time. So guys, that's really all I wanted to cover in this video, and in the next tutorial, in the next video, we will go through the HSL secondary tab and we will look how we can isolate different areas within the clips and different colors within the clips and then manipulate those colors. So guys, I hope you found this video useful and let me know how you're getting on with this stuff. And as always, if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, feel free to drop that in the comment section and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm now going to see you in the next video. So till then, you take care of yourself. Welcome back, guys, to another tutorial in this color grading section of our complete Premiere Pro 2021 course. Now in this video, we will be going through the HSL secondary and Vignette tabs, and once again, both these features are super cool and really useful. So let's talk about the HSL secondary first. So now the HSL secondary is what it does is that it gives us an ability to isolate certain colors in the clip and adjust them without affecting any other colors. So let's see how we can do that. So now I have these three individual ranges for hue, saturation and luminance in the panel, and then I've got my clip on the timeline. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of this matte. So I'm going to go into my panel and we'll pick this eyedropper, and now we'll select the color that I want to change. And in this case, it's going to be the magenta-ish color, which is the color of this matte. Now, as soon as I pick the color, it can be seen in my hue, saturation and luminance ranges over here. And now we have this color selected, and then we also have some feathering around it too. So the color that we selected, which is magenta-ish color, which is over here where this straight white line is, but here in the feathering we have the lighter shades as well. So that is just to prevent some crispiness. Now we can widen up or broaden up the range of our selection, and that is because now you can see in the clip that we've got this color which is darker on this side, but I've got the same color with a lighter shade on the other side. So I'm gonna pick this additional dropper and we'll choose the lighter shade, and now you can see in my range that I've actually widened up my range, so I've got a broadened range now. Now if you want, you can go even further and you can just kind of manually increase this up to like this. So if we now look at the grayscale picture by ticking this box, we can see that the color we have selected and the areas that we are going to be affecting. So right now I can see that I have this matte, which is absolutely fine because that is what I want to change. But I can see some shade on her hand too, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to go in my hue range and I can just adjust that, and now I think it looks fine. Now we can also use the denoise slider as well, because I can see that these white spots over here, so just to kind of refine it, and then a bit of blur just to overcome that sharpness. Now once I'm happy with my selection, I'm gonna come down here where this color wheel is, and I can start making my changes. And now you can see it straight away that these changes are only reflecting in that specific area. However, I can see the shade on her hand too, so I'm just gonna go and adjust my hue once again over here, and I can still see some on the matte itself too. So I'm gonna pick up the second eyedropper again and we'll select the lighter shade of this color. So now it looks fine. So guys, now you can see that how you kind of actually make these adjustments as well. Now we also have the flexibility of using the slider, and if you want to go even further, then you can click on this icon over here, and now you can adjust the mids, highlights and shadows individually. So just to show you the effect of it, if I make changes in the highlights, you can basically see all those effects happening in the program monitor. So it's up to you how and what you want to do. If you just want to use the main color wheel, then you can use that. If you want to go even deeper and you can go through all of these midtones, shadows and highlights, again, that's entirely up to you. Now another cool thing about this HSL secondary is that if I want to isolate just this matte and make changes to the rest of my clip, then I can simply tick this inverted box, and now you can see that the changes have been applied to all the areas of my clip except this matte. So guys, that's how you can kind of choose your specific colors in your clip and then make changes. Now let me show you another thing. So if I want to make this matte pop out, then I can simply go down and use this saturation slider, dragging it to 0 to make the whole clip black and white, and except this matte, as you can see. So now you can see the matte popping out. So guys, again, I mean, you can make further adjustments by using these sliders in the bottom. So we have the temperature once again. So if I go towards my blue, you can see the effect on the matte, and I can go towards the orange as well. Then I've got this tint, I've got the sharpness once again, and then the saturation. So basically this HSL secondary, it gives you a lot of control, and you can manipulate and change colors of your clips in whatever way you want. Now we will be utilizing these effects more in the next video, and where we will be kind of look to fix the skin tones. So guys, that's all for now in the HSL secondary tab. Now the last one we have in the Lumetri panel is this vignette, and this one is pretty straightforward. It gives you an ability to add a vignette and then make some adjustments to it by using these sliders. So I am first going to apply this vignette, and now the amount is basically how big you want your vignette to be, and then you can choose the midpoint of it as well. Now the next one is more to do with the shape of your vignette, and then finally, I mean, you can choose how soft or sharp you want the edges of your vignette to be. So nothing complicated, and it's all super easy. So guys, we have covered all of the tabs that are in the Lumetri Color Panel, and hopefully now you would be feeling more confident in grading your clips. So that's it for now, guys. I hope you liked this video, and if you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm now going to see you in the next one. So till then, you take care of yourself. What's up guys, hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to another very exciting Premiere Pro tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be using the Lumetri Color Panel to grade our footage, and we'll look at how we can improve the skin tone. And guys, if you have any confusion around the Lumetri Color Panel or around the Lumetri Scopes, then I would highly recommend you to watch the previous tutorials, as we have discussed all of this stuff extensively in our previous tutorials. So I have this footage on my timeline which looks very flat. The backdrop is full of wrinkles, and I can straight away spot that her skin tone doesn't look perfect too. So let's go ahead and try to fix these things. So I'm going to start with some basic correction, and for that I'm going to go in my Lumetri Color Panel and then the basic correction tab. But first of all, I'm just going to bring up my Luma waveform monitor, which is now here. So let's go to our basic corrections tab and start making some changes. So let's first bring the exposure down a bit. So I think this is okay. And I mean, at the moment it just looks too bright, so I think this is fine now. And then I'm going to increase the contrast as well. Okay, I think this is fine. And now let's bring the highlights down too. Okay, yeah, cool. And now I'm just going to increase the shadows very slightly. Yeah, that's, I mean, yeah, it looks so fine. And now let's bring the whites down too. Cool, it looks okay now. And I'm going to increase the blacks as well. Okay, fine. I think this is okay. Is it? Yeah. Okay, cool. So now let's see the before and after by turning the effect off and on again. And guys, I think it's already looking a lot better. Okay, so now I'm just going to increase saturation by a tiny bit because it's now lacking that glow. So hopefully increasing saturation will bring that back a bit. Now let's drag the temperature slider towards a bit of blue, and I think it looks okay, and the turn towards a bit of magenta. And now let's see again the before and after, and guys, the difference is so much clear now. Okay, so I'm now gonna go into my RGB curves, and we'll also bring the RGB parade. So let me do that. Let me get rid of the waveform monitor. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is increase the highlights by just a bit and bring the shadows down. So you can see that we have this S curve that we talked about in the previous tutorial. Okay, and we can see in the RGB parade that our red channel is much bigger, much higher than the other ones. So let's just do some color balancing as well. So I'm gonna bring the reds down very slightly, and I think it's okay now. Yeah, it looks fine. And yeah, okay, and now I'm gonna do a minor increase to the blues as well. So yeah, okay, cool. And I think our RGB parade looks much better now. Cool. So let's see the before and after. And guys, I mean, we can see it's looking so much better, but we still need to fix the skin, because while making all the other changes, we just made the whole skin tone very dull and kind of pale as well. So let's go to the HSL secondary tab and fix this. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring my vector scope up and get rid of the RGB parade. So let me just do that. And okay, so I've got my vector scope over here. Now let me select her skin hue, and I can do that very easily by using these eyedroppers over here. And I'm gonna pick the first one and we'll select her forehead. And now I'm gonna pick the other one and we'll select the rest of her face, her neck, and her forearm. I think that looks all good. Okay, so guys, now that I've selected her skin hue, let's just take this grayscale box to see what we've selected. And I think it all looks okay. It all looks fine. Yeah, it's all good. So guys, now you can see that I have my vector scope opened here, which is the most helpful and most useful scope when you are addressing skin tone issues. A general rule is that this straight line separating yellow and red is the skin tone line. So right now, as you can see that I have only selected her skin hue, and in the vector scope it's perfectly aligned with this line, which tells us that there isn't anything like massively wrong with the skin tone. If our hue was kind of going completely towards red or yellow or far from this line, then it would take us a lot longer to fix it. But right now the skin hue is already on this line, so we'll just have to kind of make some minor adjustments. So let's do that. So I'm gonna come down here in this color wheel and we'll move this plus sign towards a bit of magenta, and I think it looks okay now. Yeah, that's fine, guys. I mean, you will kind of have to do this again and again just to make sure that you find that right spot. I think this is okay now. Yeah, this looks fine. It's not too red, and our vector scope is telling us the right as well. Okay, and now I'm just gonna move this slider up too, just a bit. Okay, I think this is okay. And now let's remove some noise and increase the blurriness as well. Okay, cool. So guys, I mean, if you want to kind of adjust your midtones, highlights and shadows individually, you can always click on this icon over here and you can make changes to all these items individually. I think I'm happy with this right now. So I'm now just gonna turn off the HSL secondary effect and see what difference we have made to the skin tone. Okay, and guys, you can see that her skin tone looks much better now. In fact, let me just turn the whole Lumetri effect off and see what we've done here. Okay, and okay, cool. So guys, this is what we've done. I think it looks great now and I can't see any issues with it anymore. I mean, we have fixed the wrinkly backdrop, we fixed the flatness of this clip, we improved her skin tone as well. So guys, this is how you can kind of grade your footage. This is how you can fix the skin tone, and remember that your vector scope will be the best guide in this. And this line separating the red and yellow color represents the skin hue. So when fixing skin tone, ideally your skin hue should be on this line. I mean, as I said before, it can go slightly towards either of these colors, but you just have to be careful. You just have to make sure that it's not completely going towards red or yellow, and also it's not too far from this line. So guys, that's really it from me. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and as always, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to drop those in the comment section and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm now going to see you in the next one. So till then, you take care of yourself.